Right, so we've had a close look at Cthulhu over the past few days, talked about his balance and everything else, and today I just wanted to take the opportunity to have a closer look at his mechanics. There's a lot of things that are relatively unique to Cthulhu, and we're just gonna go through them, test them out and everything, so we can figure out this character a little bit better in detail. The first thing that is notable is his attack chain. If we look at the progression here, it is 1-1-1 in terms of damage and swing time, but the range changes and the third hit is an AoE. So if I stand here, I can probably... yeah, I can already get the second hit in this range. So my first hit is slightly too short, but the second and third hit will both hit this way. So I can move quite a fair bit away. Here's the dead zone essentially, but as long as I stay in this radius, I'm good. It feels a little bit weird that the first hit has a slightly different range, so that's something to get used to. But overall, it's definitely easy to confirm the second and third hit, and that's especially important because it applies his insanity as well. Speaking of insanity, that is one of the core mechanics when it comes to his abilities. If you're not familiar with them yet, the sanity break is his first ability, and it allows him to stack additional mitigation by using this ability after having made an enemy insane, which is requiring 4 stacks of this insanity right now. And these also increase your magical power. The more enemies you have afflicted with this, the more magical power you get. From my experience in-game, I have to say it's actually relatively hard to apply this to enemies consistently, and especially to get the sanity break off afterwards, with the exception being the ultimate where it's easier to apply. So just to quickly show you, if I apply the full insanity here, I can really just use the basic attack chain a few times. This is 2 stacks, now it's 3 stacks because the last hit will always give me more insanity. And here we are at the point where this red thing hovers around him, and that means that insanity is now applied, and now I can use the 1 and it'll fear the enemy. But the stacks don't last that long. So the sanity break has a cap, and I want to find out if this cap is actually 30% in total or 30% in addition to the 20%, so I'm just gonna spam a lot of insanity right now. Right, we have now reached the maximum insanity, and it's in fact 10% in total, so a total of 30% mitigation that you can reach, though realistically I don't think at the moment it's very likely you will reach that in most games. Something that I think is also very interesting about Cthulhu is how his ultimate works. I initially assumed that leveling one ability will level the ultimate version as well, so if I was to level the 1 first, the sanity break, then it would basically level the ultimate basic attack, but that is not the case. As you can see, my ult is specifically left on rank 3 here, and now if I ult, you will see that I actually have rank 3 on every ability in the ultimate. So with the rank of the ult, the abilities within the ult also change. What you can also notice here is that it's not that easy to apply insanity to enemies during the ultimate, even though it may sound like that. This Odin, which was a little bit further away, was actually not afflicted enough to get full insanity stacks during the ultimate. So if an enemy is running away from you and keeping a little bit off range, you won't necessarily get the full insanity effect on them. To test it a little more, let's see what happens when we have the Odin that's in front of us, facing us, and another one behind us, and see how quickly they actually stack the Torment here. It's gonna be a little bit hard to see, but maybe we'll be able to. Okay, this one has insanity now. Okay, this one reached just then. So it took like half of the duration of the ultimate roughly for them to reach the full insanity level when facing away, whereas it's relatively quickly if they are facing Cthulhu. Something else that I think is worth testing is trying to see what happens with his cooldowns during his ultimate. So we have everything on cooldown now, and now we're gonna ult. And as we can see, all of the abilities that we have now, the new abilities, are off cooldown while we're in the ult, which is nice, which is very beneficial for us obviously, because otherwise there would be much less of a purpose to use the ult in a fight. So if you want to use the full combo, you obviously throw your abilities out and then go into your ult ideally. What you can see is when we swap back, our cooldowns are actually reset. That means that in many fights we'll actually have 2 ability rotations of our normal kit in addition to the relatively short cooldown abilities during the ultimate, which in combination with at least some cooldown reduction is also very interesting, but also gives us a bit of a pointer that cooldown reduction is not always just beneficial. It helps a lot if you want to use your abilities within the ultimate more, but otherwise you may benefit more from getting other stats that help your character more in general, and just rely on the cooldown passing while you're in your ultimate. So use the abilities beforehand, use the ult abilities, and then get out of the ult and use the abilities again. Something interesting about this heal is it's based on the enemy health. It's not based on your own health. So when I heal enemies here, they'll be healed for 14% of their base health each time. You have to look at this radius. This is actually pretty massive, but at the same time, I've had a lot of situations where I felt like enemies would still get out of it, or allies would still get out of it, simply because you're not overly mobile in the ultimate. You're just walking at normal speed. Now, walking at normal speed obviously isn't bad. In fact, he feels pretty fast during his ultimate still, but it's still important when you're trying to reach your allies or reach your enemies, and you don't really have any mobility tools during the ultimate. You're just spamming your relatively long-range projectiles. The range of abilities during the ultimate is actually pretty massive. I think it's around 70 units or so, but that's for the two. The one actually has a much shorter range. It's more, well, extended melee, but it's still, I would say, around 60-ish units. So that's more than enough in my opinion. It is really good enough this way, especially when the 2 has a really long range and can hit enemies very far away. And even the 3 should be very much 60 unit circle. Actually, looking at this is exactly a 60 unit circle. If you compare that to the 2 in the normal form, if we also go 70 units away, you can actually still hit enemies, but you can actually not go quite as far, I think. It seems that because your model is bigger, you seem to be able further. We can compare that directly here. Maybe let's get to the point where we can just hit one of them. Yeah, we hit 1 with the first hit and then 2 with the second. And now we throw the ability here. And we actually hit 2 of them right away, if not 3 even. So the 2 actually has a bit of an extended range during the ultimate just due to your size. So it's very far. What I've learned is that during the ultimate you want to spam your abilities as much as you can really. During the cycle of the ultimate here, this is not with any reduced cooldown or anything, this is just CDR. You can actually see that I can use the 3 and the 2 quite often. You have to watch out sometimes because your health might dip a little bit low, especially with the 3, if you're already getting damaged a lot and you use it too many times. But overall, you get so much benefit from the 3 and the 2 that you should try and use them more than the 1. And the 1 just briefly animation locks you as well. So while you're using the 1, I can show you, you cannot use the 2 or 3. So you have to wait a little bit. It actually cancelled the 3 that I tried to use there. So you can see that here, using the 1 delays the 2 a little bit. So you want to avoid that whenever you can and just throw out the 2 and the 3 first and then drop the 1 afterwards. Unless obviously the protection reduction from the 1 is your primary goal, but I feel that most of the time you get a little bit more out of the CC that you get with the 2 as well. Maybe worth noting that you can use the 1 during the ultimate by just left clicking because it counts as your basic attack anyways. What's interesting is that due to the way your basic attack here is handled, it doesn't count as an ability in either way. So when you use the 3 here or the 2, you will actually get the additional effects, but with the 1 you literally have no basic attack effects and you have no ability effects either. Just to show you that here, this is Polynomicon. Doesn't do anything as long as I am in this form. You can, by the way, cancel out of the form early by pressing the ultimate button again. So if there's ever any situation where you need to escape quicker, you can just cancel the ult and get away that way. And that's something that I think people underestimate. I personally did not see many people canceling the ult early when sometimes it would give you that quick escape or a quick CC that you would need. And it goes relatively quickly as well, so I just cancel and I'm down here and I can dash again. So it's not too long and it can create a fair bit of distance sometimes, which can be helpful even though usually you obviously want to use the ultimate. Now let's look at Cthulhu's comboing a little bit. The most standard combo that I think you will see a lot is something that sets up with a 2, and then you slow the enemy and root them, get towards them, and then you will likely just use your 1 if you can close the distance like that, or alternatively you root them first. I'll show you that real quick as well. You root them, you're further away, and then you close the distance with your 3, apply both hits of the 3 ideally, and then hit them with your 1. That is the quickest combo to apply Madness as well, if it all goes well, or apply the full Torment effect, because you get 1, 2 stacks here, and then if you line this up perfectly, you will get 2 stacks from this, and they're at full insanity, and then use the fear. The problem is there are many situations where that will not happen, because it's really easy to mess this up if the enemy is moving around. Let's see if we can show that here. So just by channeling this, okay, we can get him, but then, yeah, he's moving away already while I'm setting up my dash, because the dash has a relatively long delay, so that takes a while to get used to, and that was obviously very whiffed there. But let's see if I can show you what I meant actually. Okay, so he didn't even get fully rooted in here, so it really depends on the placement. So it's that part alone can be harder than it seems, because the windup is quite a lot. Okay, I'm gonna set it up in a way where it will root now. And now, if I dashed like this, I'm not even sure if I... Okay, yeah, in this case I actually got the full torment. But there are many situations where you will end up only hitting the enemy with either the side projectile or the middle part of the dash. So, for example, just the red line here. And if you do that... We apply it here. And if we just hit this one, you'll see it's not full torment. So in this case, we have to now do another basic attack chain up to this point for the full insanity. And there are many situations where you simply can't do that, or the enemy will get away in that time. You want to try to do that. You want to try to definitely apply this last effect, because then you can put the fear on them, and then you get the extra protections as well, which is obviously very useful. But again, it's not as easy as it seems in real in-game fighting situations. What is maybe a little less obvious is a very straightforward burst combo that he has. If you just are not looking for the Torment effect or anything like that, you can dash in like this, you use your 1, and then you go straight into your ult, and the ult damage actually pops really early. In my opinion, it might actually pop a little bit too early. And that, I think, is the quickest damage chain that he has. Of course, you can use the 2 beforehand if you've already rooted them down, but the burst damage you can do through that, especially if you build him a little bit bursty and not pure tank, is pretty high, actually. Cthulhu's ultimate is affected by the health cap. So right now I have 4,400 HP, and if I ult now, it goes up to 5,500. But what you'll see is, if I sell Winged Blade here, and we are now a little bit under, let's just get a quick 4,300. You'll still end up at 4,500 health. 4,200, we're just slightly under the cap. We're at 5,460. So really, if you ever want to get to max health, that's where you would want to go. But it's not realistically what you want to build on him most of the time anyway, so it does not matter all too much. What I do think is very interesting is this. Right now you see me healing here for 8, 9-ish. That is from Stone of Gaia. And if I use my ult, then I heal for more. I heal for 11, which means that the max health is taken into account for Stone of Gaia, and I think that makes Stone of Gaia a little bit more viable on him than on other characters. I like that item on him in general, actually, because it gives him a bit more inherent sustain and allows him to sacrifice his own health easier. But I think knowing that this mechanic actually affects the ultimate as well is pretty advantageous. Mechanical thing for us too is currently, if you use the 2 like this, it'll channel quite long, and then your basic attack goes off, but you don't actually have to do that, because you can just channel this ability slightly beyond the first one, and you can cancel it like this, and it'll be enough to fire off the second projectile. If you time it too early like I did here, then it won't happen, but if you time it just a little bit later, like so, then the basic attack will actually come off quicker, as if I was to hold down the button and hoping to attack afterwards. There's a fair bit more delay this way. So if you want to min-max your basic attack damage, then you can cancel out just a little bit quicker here. Gem of Isolation applies on its entire ultimate, as you can see here. And it also applies on the 3 of the ult and on the 2 of the ultimate. Does not apply on the basic attack, because it doesn't count as an ability. But I think this is also very good to know, because it's super easy to just AoE slow a bunch of enemies by using Gem of Isolation on this guy. So I think it's a very potent item overall. The same thing applies for Stone of Binding. Stone of Binding is, in fact, super easy to apply to him. You can see that here. On this ability, on the 2, we can easily apply it. Even if we use the 3, we'll see that it is applied here to the enemy. You can't see it that well, but it's flashing there. And if we were to use the 2 and the 1 to get them into the Torment state, sorry, the 2 and the 3, then we can apply it once again through the 1 as well. He has a bunch of different crowd control effects that can apply it outside of the ultimate, basically every ability under certain circumstances. And in the ultimate, we can still apply it through the 2. It is hardly visible from up here. And not through the 3. However, if we combine Stone of Binding and Gem of Isolation, then this will actually work together. So I can just use my 1 and it'll still apply protection reduction. Or on a larger scale, I can use my ultimate, or I can use my 3 and it'll apply the protection reduction to them. So by combining these 2 effects, we can actually get protection reduction on everything, and I think both items are very interesting on Cthulhu, and as they synergize like that, I think he may actually be the prime character to consider those, even though Gem of Isolation at the moment is a very expensive item. It also resolves one of the main problems that Cthulhu has, which is that enemies just try to run away from him during the ultimate so much that usually it's hard to lock down enemies even with your 2 alone, but if you got multiple slows on them as well, it's less of an issue. Something else that I wanted to test is what healing increase does to his ultimate. So this is our heal, 271. By the way, we also have the effect from Lotus Crown here, so that definitely applies. And now we do the same with Rod of Asclepius, and the heal is 298. So the heal is in fact increased by any healing you may have, any healing increasing effects. And that, I think, doesn't necessarily mean that you should build Rod of Asclepius on him, but it means that you should get someone on your team to build healing increase for you. In other words, you should get someone on your team to build Caduceus shield for you, because it's a stat efficient strong item, and it helps them get more healing as well, with an already strong heal that he already has before that anyways. I would argue that Lotus Crown itself is not necessarily worth it, considering that you only heal during the ultimate, but that's, you know, personal preference, I guess. By the way, despite being a Guardian, at the moment Cthulhu packs some serious bursts, and I can show you that. That is just the damage that he can do before the ultimate. Obviously against the squishy here, but most certainly nothing that should be underestimated, especially when the damage during the ultimate also looks somewhat like this, but at the same time you're very squishy if you're intending to fight like this. A neat little trick that I just pulled there that you may have noticed, I used the 2 and then used blink after cancelling the 2. So you can channel the 2, then you cancel it and you can blink, and you will still get at least the slow effect, and if you time it perfectly you can actually get the first damage instance as well. So that will look something like this. Not easy to pull off, I gotta say that, but if you get perfect practice with it, I guess you could do it. Another interesting item I thought was Soul Gem. I wanted to see how that stacks exactly. The base kit makes very much sense, you just get normal stacks for each ability. When using the ultimate, however, we would now have the first effect applied here, and using the basic text again it does nothing. Using the 2, however, gives us the normal effect, and using the 3 also gives us the normal effect, which means that during the time span of the ultimate you can actually get quite a lot of extra stacks once again, and then go back into your normal form and go back to getting more extra stacks. Obviously I had reduced colon here, it's not necessarily quite as much, but given that you have so many ability rotations, as I've shown you before, you actually get a lot of soul gem procs in a relatively short amount of time to heal your allies if you want to. And that's on top of the healing that you get in your ult anyways. Also keep in mind that the effect from soul gem is to each guard hit, so if I pop this right here, then it procs on everyone around me, and the same would be the case if I use the 3 for it. So if you can time it right in your rotation, then you can hit this on a lot of enemies very easily in a team fight. The same obviously applies for Soul Reaver as well. Yes, you can see here. Pridwin and Staff of Myrddin also both apply as you would expect. If you use them before the ultimate, nothing happens, or like during the ultimate itself, nothing happens. But I'll show you once the ultimate runs out, you will get the Pridwin shield, and then you will also have the normal effect from Staff of Myrddin, allowing you to use an ability twice. So it's going to happen right here. We get our shield, and we have the Myrddin effect, so I can dash, and I can dash again right after. A visual aspect that may get changed during PTS, because I already reported it, but I'm not sure if it will, because it's actually quite complicated to do, is that, especially when using his ultimate, it's very hard to see item effects on him. You can barely see anything. There's a shell somewhere, and there was thorn somewhere, but from up here, it's just not really visible. And even in his normal form, if we go into that, you can see that they are less visible than other things, and you have to kind of look at your feet, or you have to kind of angle your camera down, which is actually something that you can kind of fall for when, for example, the enemy executes Sinus on you. I'd imagine I just completely missed that because it was kind of hidden under the wings a little bit, and you also typically don't look at this area. Well, you might with Cthulhu, but of your character, because you're kind of looking more in this region to see what the enemies are doing and everything. So that is something definitely worth paying attention to with him specifically, unless it gets changed somehow. Because of the way his ultimate works, he can actually not damage towers while in the ult. These basic attack-like attacks will not damage towers or phoenixes at all. So you can tank things, but you can't do damage to them. But I think it's also absolutely fair because he's such high siege potential anyways. Another thing that I want to show you is the specifics of the dash mechanic, and that's for applying 2 stacks of Torment. So what you'll notice is that not in all situations will hitting them with the middle part of the dash result in applying all the Torment stacks or getting all instances of damage. Here you can see from the comment log there was only 1 damage instance here, and there was the stun afterwards. The stun will always apply, but if you want to get both instances, you have to push them just a little bit to the side. Here you can see that there was a second damage instance after the stuns, and that is what you want to hit with. So ideally, you want to hit them at this point roughly, or at this point, just enough that they get pushed a little bit to the side, and they will get hit by the projectile when they are moving. When they're standing, it seems that the second projectile will hit them anyways. I'm not quite sure what causes that, but when they're standing, then even if I'm aiming for them here in the middle, usually we'll see the second projectile connecting afterwards. So it must have something to do with the enemy and where they move while you are dashing, or while the projectile is still following up. And you obviously want to try and confirm both parts as often as possible, because on one hand you get extra damage, and on the other hand you also get extra Torment stacks for your 1. And last but not least, I wanted to test some things that needed a second person, so thanks to Catherine for helping with this. And the first thing I wanted to see here is how long an individual stack of the Torment actually lasts. As you can see here, the indicator starts as 4 seconds, meaning the duration is exactly 5 seconds, and that's what Clumsy confirmed to me as well. So you have only 5 seconds per stack to increase your insanity, and the duration refreshes if you build up another stack, but that means that effectively you'll almost exclusively get this in a very quick combo. I also wanted to test Cthulhu's dash priority. There are various dashes with some other CC attached to it, and as far as I'm aware, the current strongest one is Hercules, because he has that stun connected to the knockback, so that the enemy will definitely get disrupted, which overrides most other knockbacks or most other dashes that work the same way. Cthulhu's dash, however, will actually override Hercules' dash in 100% of the cases. So you will always be stunned and pushed back and take the damage if you dash into him. What's interesting is that when you're Hercules, your dash will not always go on cooldown due to this. Sometimes if you fire it relatively late into the enemy dash, you will actually not get on cooldown, in other cases you will. I don't know why exactly that happens or if this is ping related. And on the topic of the dash, I also wanted to visualize the dash range that Cthulhu has a little better. It looks relatively short when you see the bars in-game basically, because Cthulhu's model is so big. But when you see it side by side with Hercules' dash, you can see that it's actually a fair bit longer, which explains why I had many situations where I was actually able to catch up to enemies quite well. You do have a slightly longer wind up at the start of the dash though. So as long as we're not talking about swiftness of the dash, Cthulhu may very well have the strongest dash in the game. And that is all for the Cthulhu mechanics. I hope this gives you a much better look into the character. If you're new to the channel, then feel free to click the sub button and maybe the bell for more upcoming Cthulhu info. And other than that, I will see you for the next one soon. DukeSloth, out.